Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered, and contribute to the community forum. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our construction, tech, or weekly Global Passive House Showcase webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. G'day and welcome back to another episode of the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from a still very sunny and getting quite dry now, Auckland in New Zealand.
I'm Zach Semke, coming to you from an extremely soggy Seattle.
Soggy in Seattle.
Soggy in Seattle. Actually, I just got back from a walk, and this has been a very, very wet and gloomy winter. But the sun is going to peek out and continue to kind of peek out among the clouds for the next week, which is super exciting. I was taking a walk with this fresh air and the sun shining a little bit, and looking at the evergreen trees against the sky and the birds chirping, and was just reminded about how much we have to cherish and protect. That
nice.
I think when we are going through heat waves and wildfires, and those times, those are really tough to go through, and it's great also to recharge when at those moments when we can kind of connect with all that is wonderful about this planet. So
that's a very nice sentiment, and it made me think about fresh air as well. And I had a couple of conversations. I've gone back to work this week as we head off into January and off our summer holiday season here. Ended up having a few conversations about trickle vents.
Yes.
And there seems to be a lot of builders and architects who are a fan of trickle vents to get air into a building. And I've had some potentially awkward conversations trying to explain to people that trickle vents, they don't work very well, at least. And there's some quite good research showing that they don't work. But yeah, it's quite a big. If you go into an hour-long meeting, you don't want to really get down into the weeds, because it ends up being quite a long explanation as to why air tightness is a good thing and why trickle vents in windows aren't necessarily a good thing.
We have our share of trickle vents in multifamily buildings in Seattle. I think it's something we're moving away from, but yeah, not the greatest.
Sounds like that's a good topic for a technical session at some point in the future on the accelerator.
Indeed.
But let's jump into this week's episode. But before that, we've got some people to thank for helping to support the podcast.
We sure do. So our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingui Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minutair All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Our champion sponsors are Icon Windows and Doors, Proseco, and SIGA, and our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So a big thank you to all of our sponsors that make everything that we do with Accelerator possible.
Thank you. All right. Now, Amy Tankard. Amy is the first Chief Executive Officer of Passive House Institute. I was on the board for a number of years, and I'm privileged to be part of that group, and in the process of getting the organisation to a point where we were able to follow, I think, Passive House Canada's lead in appointing someone to manage the day-to-day and to grow the organisation, grow the movement, if you like, in New Zealand. And it's a bit of a process. It's a tough job, I think, becoming a CEO of a fledgling not-for-profit organisation. And it's great to have someone like Amy in that seat. She's got an HR background, so she's been involved with people and organised organisations that are quite large, especially relative to the smaller organisation. But as she describes in this interview, she's getting some first-hand experience of Passive House now with the building of her very own house. Another connection that I had personally is that we didn't mention this in the interview, but I actually sat next to Stephen, who is Amy's husband, during my Passive House training course when I became Passive House certified consultant. Her partner Steve is a really smart guy, and yeah, he was doing that training as well here in Auckland. So great to see their journey of going through that training and now embarking on the process of building their own house. So here is my chat with Amy Tankard, CEO of Passive House Institute New Zealand. All right, Amy Tankard, thank you very much for joining us on the Passive House podcast. It's great to have you on the show. It's been a while. We've been trying to get you on for a little while, so it's great to have you here.
Yes, thanks, Matthew.
Now, by way of introduction, tell us a little bit about your role at FINS.
Okay, so I'm the CEO of FINS, which is the Passive House Institute New Zealand, also known as Te Tapatanga o Te Wharekaro ki Aotearoa, and that means the Houses of Vitality in New Zealand.
That's cool though, because there's a bit of a story behind that, right? It's not just something that is a direct translation of Passive House Institute New Zealand.
No, that's right. So we engaged someone to help us. It was one of our former board members who had a contact who really had a lot of information and really thought about what Passive House meant. And so, as you say, it's not a direct translation of Passive House. It was really thinking about groups of houses or groups of buildings, and vitality is really I suppose what Passive House is trying to achieve. So in terms of well-being and vitality of the occupants and also the communities where passive houses are.
It's a beautiful name, and it's a beautiful meaning as well, which I think in some ways actually does a better job of describing not just what Passive House is, but what it can do and what it can provide for people and communities.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because it's when you say Passive House, although it is changing in New Zealand, say Passive House, people don't really know what you mean, but then once you explain, and my sort of go-to is I normally say it's really energy efficient and healthy buildings. That's my sort of go-to phrase that I use to when I'm at a barbecue or whatever, when I'm speaking to someone about what do I do and who I work for.
It's not one of those passive solar houses that has to face north and have the right glazing and have really thick walls to maintain the
Yes,
heat.
No, that's right. And explaining the difference, because people say, oh, yes, I know someone with a passive house. But sometimes they don't mean a passive house, they mean something else. Yeah. So just terms of Passive House Institute New Zealand, we're a charitable trust in New Zealand, 10 years old now, and up until recently, well, I suppose 18 months ago now, it was purely run by a volunteer board, and that board made the decision to take on a CEO as the first paid employee of FINS to really look at raising the profile of Passive House and Passive House Institute New Zealand. And we've also now got a fantastic administrator as well. So that just really enables us to spend time on things like comms, and also our processes in terms of our membership. So our membership has doubled really in the last year, and we're up to 200 members now, which is fantastic.
Have you got some numbers around certifications and number of houses? Because I remember it being less than 20 certified passive houses for a long time in New Zealand.
That's right. So now it's 66 certified passive house dwellings, and I know there's a lot in the pipeline for this year. So yeah, that's there's been a huge increase, I suppose, percentage wise in 2021. And that's just going to keep on growing. And of course, you know about the well, currently there's two Kāinga Ora projects, which is Kāinga Ora Homes and Communities in New Zealand, that are have passed their pre-construction review and starting construction. And that they're both in Auckland. So there's one in Mangere in Auckland and another one in Glendowie.
Now that's really significant because it's not just about the numbers there; it's about a different typology, but also a totally different demographic. Because those first, what I'd say, 20 certified passive houses they all had one thing in common, in that they were individual standalone houses and they were architecturally designed and relatively high end. Some of them would probably say they weren't high end, but they were private.
That's right.
Homes.
People with the means and I suppose the passion for passive house that were building usually their own family homes. That's right.
Yeah. And now we're seeing, so Kāinga Ora is social housing? Correct.
Yeah. And the really exciting, well, they're both those projects are very exciting, but the really exciting one is the one called Ngā Kāinga Anamata, which means homes of the future. And they are building 5 different buildings in all to passive house standard, and Homestar. You'll have to tell me one of the Homestar ratings, Matthew, as well.
Oh, they're aiming for pretty high up. They're aiming for a 9 or a 10, which I mean, that's the beauty of passive house, is that it opens the door to doing that, because you tick off all the really important stuff first in terms of thermal performance and comfort and health.
Yeah, absolutely. So passive house fits in so nicely with Homestar, because I know if you achieve passive house, then you achieve, I believe it's 22 out of 100 of the points towards Homestar 9 or 10. So that's great. And I think what's really exciting about the Ngā Kāinga Anamata project is that the plan to it's a research project as well as being somewhere where people will eventually live. And Kāinga Ora plans to share that information with the industry, their learnings and their research, and also to demonstrate to the industry how it can be done, using different materials and at scale. I wouldn't say it's not a huge scale yet, but certainly at scale it's 30 dwellings, because it's 5 buildings of 6 dwellings each.
Just on the topic of research, why do we need more research? Because social passive housing is not a new thing worldwide, and neither are multiple other typologies of commercial buildings, schools. We've got a hospital now that's underway. Why do we need research into how to build social passive houses?
From my point of view, it's a no-brainer that we do build to the passive house standard, but what the research is about is how we can best achieve that, in a cost-effective way and in a way that is scalable. Yeah. So I think that's where the research comes in.
And looking at it in the local context. So, we can't just transplant necessarily a design from New York social housing or from Exeter, because the different materials, different products, different building codes, regulations, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, and also and just how the industry is set up at the moment in terms of supplies of components. So, how can we, I suppose, give the industry reassurance that, or give an indication that if they set up as a Windows supplier, supplying passive house certified Windows, that there's that market for them, and there certainly is, but that uh, departments such as Kangora, it's a huge part of the New Zealand housing market. Are committed to spending on those supplies and those components.
Yeah, so giving some assurance and
Exactly.
just helping the industry upscale as because I think we've done a pretty good job with getting some designers schooled up, getting them trained in PHPP and the passive and getting them certified. But now we need product suppliers, we need more builders. Just need the whole network.
And just making it. Well, I wouldn't say simple, but making it easy. So knowing that you can go and you can find these windows or you can find these supplies. And I suppose COVID's had an impact in terms of being able to easily import or quickly import what's required. And of course, we want to support the New Zealand industry. So if there are suppliers that can manufacture or provide the components that you can say, okay, I want to design, I want to build a passive house. These are the windows I'm going to use. These are the suppliers I can use to do that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I kind of change my mind from time to time on that. Sometimes thinking, why does it make sense for a relatively small country to set up a whole industry trying to manufacture really high-end products when there's some really good products available from overseas, and that's what most of the people who have done the early passive houses have had to do. They've had to import windows from Germany or from Eastern Europe somewhere. The other flip side to that is that we don't necessarily need the uber triple glazed, triple seal tilt turn windows for a passive house, particularly here in Auckland. I mean, you might need that in Queenstown or Christchurch or some of the parts of the South Island, but equally timber framing and insulation, you can actually do you can build a lot of the way to the passive house with some of the products that are readily available here. It's more just about that attention to detail and adding in things like air tightness and decent ventilation.
Yeah, and I think what we would probably say with our build is start with the windows. Speaking of windows, and if you can find or a manufacturer, or if you can source the windows that are going to give you that good performance, you can build the rest of the building around that, or you can design the rest of the building around that. But it's really important. I think, as you say, if you've got that attention to detail at the beginning, I think there's no reason why it couldn't be done in New Zealand, because it seems like all windows that are manufactured here are one-offs. Specifically, there isn't standard window sizes or standard.
We don't do standardization with windows in New Zealand.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
That's bizarre. Hey, you mentioned your build. Tell us a bit about what that is and why.
Yes, so I've been on a massive journey personally with Passive House. I was just 3 years ago, hadn't heard of Passive House at all, and we were looking for a family home, and just really were a little bit horrified, I suppose, about because I'd lived in the UK for 13 years and my husband's English, and we came back to New Zealand and were looking for somewhere to buy, and just things like things that mentioned all the time, the condensation on the windows, that looking in the wintertime and the floor was freezing cold, things like that. And so we started to look at what we could do or how we could maybe find something better. and eventually came across Passive House. And for us, it was just a real no-brainer because of the the fact that it was, a proven system where you can actually model the performance of the building. And so we bought a section in Waihi, which is in the North Island of New Zealand, about 2 hours south of Auckland, and we got an architect and we started designing a Passive House. And at that stage, actually, we didn't know about the Passive House Institute New Zealand. We didn't. We found an architect, and then we asked to do Passive House. So obviously, if we were starting again, I mean, she did a fantastic job, but we're starting again, we'd go to the Passive House Institute New Zealand's website and we'd find a Passive House certified designer. But starting from a position of complete naivety. And, I like to think in my role now with Fins, in terms of raising the profile of Passive House and Fins in New Zealand, someone starting now would know to go to that website, or to our website. And so we are partway through our build now. We used prefabricated panels. So it was all the wall elements were built off-site in a factory in Christchurch in the South Island and trucked up and then put up. And so that all went up really quickly. So it went from a concrete slab to within a week, it actually looked like a house. So that was very exciting. And another thing that was great was doing some 3D modeling. So we did. We had an organisation that did 3D modelling of the design, and in that way, there was probably 4 or 5 little things that were picked up through that process that otherwise wouldn't have been picked up until we were on site. So, an example I'll give you is just in the laundry area, there was it was too narrow for the door to open. And just sort of things like that may not have been picked up until on site and then had to be solved on site. We were able to solve in advance.
Was that something that your architect did as standard, or was it something?
No, it was. So it was actually EcoPanel who engaged the organisation to do the 3D modelling, so that then and then the wall framing was actually then manufactured. It was all designed by machine and then was able to be manufactured.
Okay. So is that part of their process to do the converting from
it is now. And I think that was a really good way to go about it, because you could really see in advance how it was all going to work, and some of those snags and glitches that might have happened on site were addressed in advance.
It's one of those things that when you hear about that as a total naive client, you think, well, isn't that standard? Why would you not do that? And that's
absolutely.
The process of good design is making sure that the doors open correctly and that nothing's going to bang into anything else. And but it's not necessarily. And these are some of the pitfalls of a process that people often go through once, maybe twice in their whole life. Mm-hmm. And there's so many things that they don't know about.
Yeah, I think often when speaking to other people who have been doing, who've done builds themselves, often what you'll find is that these little issues that come up are solved on site. But I suppose the thing with Passive House is that it needs to be built as designed so that it will actually, pass the certification and meet the criteria. So and I have heard stories of other builds where they don't really end up with what was designed, and you just can't do that with Passive House because you need to have that quality assurance, and that's one of the really good things about Passive House is that you do have that quality assurance because you can't you shouldn't get those sorts of surprises, because if there's an issue that comes up on site, I guess the team has to work together to solve that, because you can't just bodge it.
Yeah. I mean, it's all well and good to push a wall out or alter something on a regular build. But if that might mean adding a corner that wasn't, or a couple of corners, and adding some thermal bridges, or putting a hole through the air tightness layer, or all sorts of problems that might not otherwise be a problem if someone wasn't paying attention to that. But if it's required for their performance, like you say, then it could be the source of quite a major issue later on down the track when you pull out the red door, do the big air tightness test. Why?
And I think we were really lucky.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, so we're really lucky in terms of the team that we've got. Are really passionate about Passive House and want to achieve that certification.
Were they from the start, or is that something that's happened as a result of this project?
We were lucky to find our builder. He is very very keen on Passive House and has done the certification and was recommended to us by one of the FIN's board members, and so he's very much on board. And we had spoken to quite a few builders previously, and just didn't get that sense of commitment. Even when we were first speaking to builders, them saying things like, "Oh yeah, you have to have double glazing in New Zealand. That's the building code now." So we really got that sense that a lot of people just didn't really get it in terms of what we were trying to achieve.
Double glazing, and then there's double glazing.
Yeah.
Why is that part of the reason why you've ended up with a Christchurch-based builder who specialises in panelization? Because that's not an obvious decision, based in Waihi, which is 1,000 kilometres away.
So our builder was based in Tauranga, but we wanted to go with the eco panel. So our builder, our wall elements.
So here the builder is relatively local. The main
builder is local. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so they've liaised together to make sure that what was built off site was correct, and then it was brought to site, and a couple of the guys came up from Christchurch, and our builder and some of his workers then all worked together to put that together.
Is it the first time that builders used panelisation?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Did you get a price for doing a standard, still a Passive House, but using just standard stick frame construction, or did you make the decision to go with panels fairly early on?
We made the decision to go with panels fairly early on. We just thought it was really conducive to achieving Passive House, and what we liked that it was built undercover and then brought to site and put up really quickly. So, it was weather tight very quickly, rather than, we've seen other builds on the same subdivision sitting out in the rain, halfway built, whereas with ours, it was yes.
I've seen so many houses that got their framing put up early August.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we went into
the lockdown,
3-month lockdown, and have just been sitting out, getting wet and then dry, and then wet and then dry for 3 months. And then now they've just kind of carried on, and there's like black spots and mold and stuff already growing on the timber frame.
Yeah.
But it's, as long as the council comes along and probes it and says that the moisture content of that timber is less than 20% at the time when they come to inspect, they'll pass it and it'll be fine.
Yeah. And so as I said, just really appealed to us in terms of what we were trying to achieve, having the wall framing, the lining, the insulation was all there, and it just needed to be put up. And
any issues with the council there with that process?
No,
given that you've had the walls made somewhere else.
No, not related to that at all.
Nice.
There was no issue with that side of things.
And so,
I don't know if that's standard or if we were lucky there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, part of that is probably good planning and just having a good process and that attention to detail as well. If everything is well thought through, it makes life easier for the consenting officer.
Yeah.
Can you give us some general stats on the house? Is it single story? How many
Yeah.
bedrooms? What sort of size?
Sure. So it's a two-story house, and that was part of the consideration. Well, there was two things, as I mentioned. My husband's from the UK, and that's standard to have bedrooms upstairs and living and so forth downstairs. But it was also to do with having a really simple shape and having a lower surface to volume ratio. And so it's a very simple. It's rectangle design. There's three bedrooms upstairs, and there is actually a bedroom downstairs, and then there's also a double garage attached with which is outside of the thermal envelope. So we just need to worry about that very simple rectangle shape. It's 200 square meters, and we've also we needed shading for the so we needed windows to obviously capture the sun and the view, but we also have doubled up a balcony on the second story, which doubles as shading for those downstairs windows. So during the summer, we shouldn't overheat. Yeah. So as I say, a really simple design, and then downstairs sort of open living and dining, I suppose, just to and sort of kitchen there, just without having to worry about different rooms. I suppose that's fairly standard in New Zealand anyway, to have that sort of open plan kitchen and dining, and then that opens out onto a deck. And so we've got the classic New Zealand indoor-outdoor flow. And one thing that that I've heard anecdotally is that, when you do have a passive house, you're happy to kind of sit outside later on into the evening when it does start to get cool, because then that once you go inside and close the door, that the house will get back up to a comfortable temperature very quickly. So, being able to take advantage of those long summer evenings, and then knowing that your house will be warm, and not too warm.
I heard the very same thing from someone who inspired your role, was Rob Bernhard at Passive House Canada, first CEO there, who said that exact thing, that contrary to a common misconception that you have to keep doors closed and sealed up, you actually can enjoy opening windows and doors more in a passive house, because you're not fearful of that loss of heat and the ability for the house to respond positively afterwards. Now, you've, like all good passive house projects, got a Facebook page with some fantastic photos. So we'll put a post there so people can I'll put a link so people can go and check that out, and that'll give people a very good idea of on-site. But I see that EcoPanel have also sent some nice photos of their operation and putting the walls together, which is, I just think that's fantastic what they're doing. I think it's a great scale of operation. It's not a high-tech robotic fully automated factory, but it's appropriate for the scale, which is I think your project is proving that point. I think opens the door to a lot more. What's the estimated completion date? When's the moving in party?
Okay, well, we're hopeful we'll be ready, but for the open days in June. So we are we're going to be waiting for our windows to arrive from Germany. So that's that's probably the one thing we probably can't really move in without windows, unfortunately. Yeah. And not that we would want to. So we are embracing we're living at the beach over the summer, and then by the New Zealand winter time, be cozy in our passive house.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's your project. Back to Finn's, just to finish up. What's on the horizon there? What's the outlook for 2022 for both Finn's, but also just Passive House in general in New Zealand?
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to our conference, which is going to be in April, at the end of April in Auckland. So key themes of the conference will be social housing and also multi-generational housing. So looking forward to that. And I suppose just with there's definitely, I've seen such a uptake in the momentum of Passive House in New Zealand. So just really building the support resources of the Passive House network here. And one of our focus for this year now, 2022, is to basically ensure that that there is sufficient training available, because we're going to need these Passive House designers and builders. So being able to be the organisation that provides that support and training for professionals is going to be our focus, and then just really raising the continuing to raise the public awareness of Passive House and why Passive House is in the sort of, I suppose, in the public view, and it being seen as a as the option to I think James Shaw, the climate change minister, back in May, highlighted Passive House as, if you're looking to build a energy efficient, healthy home, Passive House, and I believe other systems were also mentioned, but Passive House is certainly one of the options to go for.
Yeah. It's I think there's more and more coming out now about the role that Passive House can play in climate change response, both mitigation and preparation for more extreme weather events, but certainly in reducing our carbon footprint. And we tend to hide behind a whole bunch of stuff in New Zealand. The fact that we've got in theory a renewable energy network, but we still have a huge contribution. Nearly 20% of our housing contributes to our overall greenhouse emissions. So anything that we can do to change that from an embodied point of view, but also operationally, is huge. And I think projects like yours that just make, I mean, those stats that you rolled off, 200 square meters, 3 bedrooms with an extra bedroom, double garage, that could be any house in New Zealand.
Yeah, it's pretty standard. That's right.
It's totally standard. And that's good because we kind of want passive houses in some ways. We want them to be houses that when people drive past, they don't even notice that they're a passive house. They don't necessarily need to stick out for any negative reason. They just sort of are there and achievable and accessible to everyone.
Yeah, that's right. And in our Finn's brochure, Passive House, Homes Where People Thrive, we talk about, perhaps having a simple shape, perhaps slightly reducing the footprint, the square meters, and thinking about the thermal envelope first, because things like it's much better to spend on that first as opposed to necessarily kitchen and bathroom, because so just to prioritize, it's very difficult to change the thermal envelope, or it's much more difficult to change the thermal envelope. So think about that as soon as possible.
I love that idea of starting with the windows.
Start with the windows. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, well, thank you for your time, Amy. I know we're all on holiday at the moment, so I really appreciate giving us a little bit of your time. Good luck with the rest of the build.
Thank you. We're really excited to move in.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. Great spot, and really, big good opportunity for other people to check out, and yet another Passive House in New Zealand, and
Yes.
all the best for 2022 for Finns, and I'm looking forward to that conference.
Yes, we're great to
It's
see
going to
you
be
there.
I think it's going to be one of many 2021 conferences that happen during 2022.
Yeah.
it's going to be a busy time. We've got a lot of catching up to do with events and activities that got postponed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really looking forward to having some in-person
yes,
interaction with people. Yeah,
definitely.
but adhering to all the COVID rules, of course.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much, Amy.
Okay. Great, Matthew. Thanks so much.
And that was Amy Tankard, the CEO of Passive House Institute New Zealand. Really great to catch up with Amy again. As I said in the outset, I was involved in the Passive House Institute myself. Been great to be part of that organisation, and still, we still have quite a lot to do with them, and great to see the growth of Passive House in New Zealand. What do you think, Zach?
Great interview, and really good to see Passive House Institute New Zealand grow in this way and have the capacity to do more and more programming. And I know that there are all sorts of resources available on their website for download, and so really important move, and heartening to watch Passive House organizations grow stronger and more agile and more able to get the word out. I was also really struck by that the Maori term for Passive House Institute New Zealand, and that connection to the concept of vitality and energy in homes. I thought that was we I think struggle with the term passive house, and how it can be really kind of confusing to people, and this notion of homes of vitality is really powerful, the way that it connects to well-being of people and of community and a planet as well. So that was really, I hadn't heard the translation before, and it was fun to learn about that.
Yeah. I want to do a shout out to a couple of people, but Dr. Carl Rosemeyer, who has been instrumental behind the scenes as former chair of Passive House Institute, but she's quite very inspirational. I mean, English is at least her second language, if not more, originating from Germany, but she takes a noticeable effort to introduce herself in Te Reo and really incorporate as much Te Reo into anything that she does in a very appropriate and culturally sensitive way. And her influence has contributed to Passive House Institute going down this path and showing leadership in this way to the extent of not just having a name, but what that there's quite a lot involved in a name change when your organization's up and running. You got to change the logo, you got to change, some of the other marketing material and other bits and pieces. So it's not a small thing. And Kara's been certainly an inspiration to me in the way that she's embraced that and tried to incorporate that. And it's not just words; there's a lot more behind that, and an exploration of what the term actually means and what we're trying to achieve in terms of vitality and community and energy, not just in the technocrat sense of electricity or gas, but in the energy that we have as people, and trying to think about that as how we live and in connection with each other, but also with connection with the environment. But also, so while I'm doing shout outs, I just want to also shout out to Elrond, who
absolutely
has been pretty instrumental in getting Amy on board and establishing a role of a CEO of the Passive House Institute. He was the chair of the board at that time, and that's a volunteer role, and he just did a huge amount of work to and had a lot of foresight and vision to really step up the professionalism of organisations. So and there's a whole team around them. So I'm not going to go through the whole board, but I just wanted to acknowledge the work that Elrond and Cara have done for Passive House in New Zealand.
Well done. And I sorry I was about to interrupt, and I'm glad that that you also thanked Elrond. Those are Cara and Elrond are also inspirational figures for us globally, and have played a really important role. And actually, so Cara presented. I saw her probably 7 years ago present at Passive House Northwest, and was really taken by her presentation, and also was impressed. Hers was I think the first land acknowledgement that I witnessed before a presenter, a non-Indigenous presenter made. Probably, and now in Seattle, like the local soccer team does a land acknowledgement before games. It's become something that, rightly so, is mainstreamed. But Cara was definitely on the kind of, was one of their early people to model that and to take a moment to make that acknowledgement. So
nice.
It was definitely stuck with me.
Coming back to Amy, the other thing that I was really excited to talk about to Amy about was her build, and the fact that she's stepping into the process of building a passive house and learning all of the finer details of that, and specifically doing it with prefabricated building wall elements and panels. I know the process and the particular panels that she's using. As I think it's really exciting to see that they actually originate from the South Island here in New Zealand and being brought up to the North Island, but getting a local builder to put them all together, which can be harder than that sounds. And it's exciting to see them go through that process. And it seems to be running successfully. Check it out on their Facebook page. They've got a page up and running showing their construction as they go through that. But yeah, I really like that form of creating a passive house. So it was great to see her implementing that, because we don't really have a lot of providers, a lot of suppliers of high quality panels, particularly up here in Auckland. So this is showing that there's demand for it, which is great.
Yeah, when you were exploring that combination of the panel manufacturer from far away, but the builder, the local builder, putting it all together, it brought me back to the conversation that I had with Tessa Bradley at FIASCon, where Tessa is an architect in Olympia, Washington, and now is really likes to do prefab work, partly because it allows her to work with a broader range of builders, and so she knows that there's some, it adds some kind of certainty, a little insurance, that when she's working with a new builder, she'll still be able to achieve passive house levels of airtightness and performance. And so she has a broader kind of a group of folks that she can draw from to execute her projects. So as Amy was describing that early commitment to doing the eco panels, and then working with the builder, it struck me as maybe a really useful model for others in places in New Zealand where the local builders may be new to passive house.
Yeah, and the other message there is that builders shouldn't be threatened by panels. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a temptation to think that a builder's not going to want to go down that path because that's their thing is building walls and doing the carpentry. But building can be so much more than that. It can, the art of putting a building together, and if you look at the panels as a component of that building, and your skill as a builder is putting those together, and the finishing detail and the attention that you can pay to the rest of the building that the people are going to see and interact with on a daily basis, and the beauty of the finished product. There's so much more that can go into the craft of building a beautiful home rather than just putting sticks of wood together on a building site. And that, I think it's really great to come across a builder who's open to what might be new for them. It's not necessarily new in the greater scheme of things, and also see the benefits of that. Because we're finding that it's clients, and obviously Amy has a lot of vested interest and now some inside knowledge on all things Passive House, but it's not that uncommon still for clients to be driving a project like this and educating the builder on the basics of Passive House, including really fundamental things like airtightness. Because there's a lot of builders who will not have had to build an airtight building or had any attention paid to airtightness in the past. So you kind of need to be doing quite a big education piece if you're going to be going down that path with most builders still in New Zealand.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else from you?
No, a great interview. Thanks, Matthew, for getting it.
Pleasure. And it will probably be on the events list, which we'll run through now, but definitely keep an eye out for the South Pacific Passive House Conference, which is doing a bit of an Olympic Games this year, and we're having the 2021 Passive House Conference in 2022. And that'll be
in Auckland in April. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully exciting. In person.
Yeah. That's great. Fingers crossed. Crossed. Yeah, well, on the accelerator front, in terms of what's happening, just a reminder that we have the new issue of the Passive House Accelerator magazine published, and this is looking at climate action from North America to South America. So thanks again to Mary James, the editor, and her team for putting together a really fantastic issue. So it's available for download as PDF or on the Passive House Accelerator website. This coming week for events, we have on Tuesday our time, Wednesday your time, in New Zealand and Australia. We have tools for tackling embodied carbon on the Construction Tech event. We'll be joined by Steph Carlisle, who is with the Carbon Leadership Forum at the University of Washington. The Carbon Leadership Forum is a key player and thought leader in embodied carbon. So Steph will be talking about building a stronger data and analysis ecosystem regarding embodied carbon in buildings. On Wednesday, our time, so Thursday, your time, at the Global Passive House Showcase, we have a really exciting presentation from Envisage Architects and Zon Engineering. So Emma Cubitt and Graham Cubitt from Emma Cubitt from Envisage Architects, Graham Cubitt from Indwell Design, and Greg Leskian from Zon Engineering. And they're going to be talking about the McQuestion Lofts Passive House Journey. So this is a project in Ontario, Canada, multifamily project. They have now 12 multifamily projects under their belt, multifamily passive house projects under their belt. So this is going to be an opportunity to see how, what their go-to solutions are for mechanical design, for the evolution of the envelope on these buildings. It's a really cool opportunity to hear from a super experienced team about how, the solutions that they've come to over the years. So please join us for that. And then on Thursday, so Friday your time, we're going to have episode 4 of the Building Performance Interactive. So this is our UK and Ireland-based show with co-hosts Hugh Wariski, Mike Jacob, and Ben Adam Smith. The topic will be super insulated, airtight, passive house homes with timber frame construction. And we're going to hear from Lee Broomhall of NBC Timber Frame and Adrian Williamson of WM Design and Architecture about a cool project that they're doing. So we hope you'll join us for this special. This happens once a month, so it's a cool opportunity. And finally, I want to just share that we are going to be consolidating construction tech and the Global Passive House Showcase series and communities under one umbrella called Passive House Live. And we're going to start that the first week of February. And so these Passive House Live will take place on Wednesday, our time. So for Thursday in New Zealand and Australia. And on the first and third weeks of every month, we will do a project showcase. And on the second and fourth weeks of every month, we'll dive into construction tech. And then on the odd fifth Wednesday that happens every once in a while, we'll do something special. Nice. So Passive House Live, join us for that.
Awesome.
Beginning of February.
It's looking very, very cool. Great. Lots going on. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Great to talk.
We'll be back again on the Passive House podcast again next week. See you all then.